Just like its natural media counterpart, you need to be able to quickly service your brush by both cleaning it and loading it with color. The mixer brush has some shortcuts for performing these actions, but Adobe does not assign these shortcuts by default. In this video, we'll learn how to assign shortcuts, as well as add them to the Wacom Control Tablet surface. I'm going to begin by showing you an example of what I'm talking about. And I'm using the blunt round dirty brush from the tool preset library that is included in the exercise files. And let's just put a bit of color onto the screen. Now, when I start to paint with this brush, what happens is whatever's underneath the brush at the end of a stroke gets contaminated into the next stroke that's produced. So what will happen is you'll get a natural media type effect of painting wet in wet. Color on the brush gets contaminated by what it finds underneath of it. And that can be a useful technique. The reason it happens in a dirty brush is because neither the auto load or auto clean functions are enabled. What would be nice would be able to temporarily enable these effects. And you can do so by clicking on the color preview and selecting load brush. Now my brush loads with the current color and becomes contaminated again. But every time I want to load that brush, I've got to come up and once again manually select load brush. It's a bit of a stretch to have to go up here and go through this interface action to make this happen. What would be really elegant is a way to do this with a single click, and we can do that. We're going to use keyboard shortcuts to make this happen. On the Mac, it's under the Edit menu, and we'll find down here at the bottom, Keyboard Shortcuts. And we're going to make sure we're in the Tools panel. And if you navigate all the way down to the bottom, you'll find a set of keyboard shortcuts for loading and auto loading, as well as cleaning the brushes. But you can see there are no keyboard shortcuts assigned to this, so this is what we need to do. And I searched around in Photoshop's keyboard shortcuts and located some shortcuts that don't appear to be used anywhere. So I'm taking advantage of that. For the manual load mixer brush, I'm going to use the left angle bracket. So I need to hold down the Shift key and press on the left angle bracket. For clean, I'm going to do the same thing, only I'm going to use the right angle bracket. And for toggle automatically, I'm going to use the colon sign for the auto load. Now you can see here is a place where this is used. I don't use the magnetic pen and lasso tools with any great frequency, so I chose to replace this. You may find that this is a very important keyboard shortcut for you, so my advice is to find a keyboard shortcut that you're replacing with some tool you never use. In my case, it was the magnetic pen and lasso tool. And then finally, for the toggle, the auto clean, I use the semicolon. And the same thing, this is also used here by the magnetic pen and lasso tools. Again, I don't use it, so I'm going to accept those. So now I have a set of keyboard shortcuts that I can use to automatically change the state of these. Let's just go ahead and look at this. Now, for example, if I go in here and do the auto load, I'm just going to click on it. You can see how it's now turning on and off without me having to go up and actually click on it. Same thing with the auto clean. I can do that from the keyboard. And finally, I can also go in here, and you won't see this happen, but if I do load brush, I've now just loaded the brush. And then once again, it reverts to a dirty brush, but if I click on the left angle bracket, I have a loaded brush again for one stroke. Now that's great, but I want to take it one step further, and we're going to use the express keys on the Wacom tablet to assign these. And I find this an even better way to do it because it's just right next to you while you're working, and it doesn't involve having to move your hand up to the keyboard. Again, everybody has different techniques, but I find this to really work well. So I'm going to navigate to the Wacom driver. On the Mac, it's under the Apple menu and System Preferences, and on Windows, you'll find it in the Control panel. So let's find the Wacom driver, and we're going to go to the function keys. And make sure if you don't have this, you're going to want to create an application-specific set of tool presets so that they're assigned to Photoshop CS5. That way, if you have other applications, you can go ahead and change their settings without interrupting what you've done for Photoshop. And one thing I want to mention before I go farther is that I'm left-handed, So I have the control surface set up to be on the right side of my tablet. That way my left hand is free to paint and I can use my right hand to quickly access the control surface. For most of you, you're probably going to have this the opposite way. So just be advised that I'm doing this for a left-handed setup. You'll just reverse this if you're right-handed. So I assign to these the keyboard shortcuts through the keystroke command, and we'll just delete this to show how I did this. So all I did is, once again, I just held down the shift key and the right angle bracket, and it's going to look incorrect here because it doesn't know how to display the right angle bracket. But that is the right keyboard command. We say OK, and that is assigned. So basically, I just went through and assigned my keyboard shortcuts that I put into Photoshop into the Wacom tablet. So this is a two-step process. You first need to create the keyboard shortcuts via the keyboard shortcut command in Photoshop CS5. Once they're assigned in Photoshop, now you have keyboard shortcuts you can place into the keystroke commands in the Wacom tablet. And once that's all done, I now have the ability to use these commands right from my control surface. And I'll show you a couple other ways this can be useful. For example, if I have a blender brush and I am blending color, I may want to temporarily change to painting with that. All I have to do is click Load Brush, and now it's got a one-stroke fill of color. The next time I start using it, it's once again a blender brush. But this gives me a way to be in a blender brush and temporarily have color on the tip of my pen. With cleaning and loading keyboard shortcuts in place for handy access, you can closely simulate traditional natural media mark making or automate it at will, all with a single click. I think you'll find a great deal of flexibility in having these keyboard shortcuts available for various types of modifications to your brush on the fly.